to introduce our next fireside chat. We at Underscore have been investors in commerce for a long time, and so it's a real privilege to have one of the best entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the commerce space with us today, Tobi Lutke. And he will be joined by his own board member and a very well-known business builder and entrepreneur here in Boston, Gail Goodman. Gail is the, I'm going to brag about you a little bit longer, sorry. Gail is the co-founder and chief product officer of Pepperlane, which is a community and a platform that helps enable a new form of entrepreneurship for moms. She spent 16 years as CEO of Constant Contact. Yeah. And she's also been one of the very original members of the Underscore core community. She is a tech visionary, she's a great operator, and it is no surprise that she is sought out as a board member. And so she serves on the board of Shopify, but also Lola.com, Entrepreneurship for All, as well as Mass Challenge. Tobi, co-founder and CEO of Shopify, a multi-channel international e-commerce platform. I think Shopify doesn't need too much introduction. I would bet that everyone in this room has either purchased or at least touched the Shopify software. It is now being used by over 800,000 businesses across 175 countries. But I think what's most interesting to me is that Tobi is a developer in his core. He was part of the core team that worked on the Ruby on Rails framework, and he continues to contribute to open source libraries along the way. From what I've heard, he even sort of was building the initial code for Shopify sitting in coffee shops in Ottawa because he wanted to sell snowboards online. And at one point, he faced an important decision: should I sell snowboards or software? And we and the entire commerce industry is very excited that you decided to sell software. So please join me in welcoming Gail and Tobi to the stage.
We're putting Tobi in the middle, right?
Lots of water.
Lots of water here.
Yeah. Gotta go in the middle.
Good. Hello, everyone.
Woohoo. Awesome. Well, just to get us started, we'll throw a bunch of questions your way. But Tobi, legend has it that you were a little bit of a reluctant CEO, which is not that common, actually. So what made you decide to take on the role?
So initially I didn't. Well, I was a CTO of a snowboard business. This is how I got roped into this whole thing. And my co-founder for the snowboard business, after it went through what's now called a pivot, at some point decided that this wasn't the right thing for him himself anymore. And I tried to, so I inherited the CEO mantle, which I then really tried to get rid of by finding someone who would actually want to do this, because I just really like technology. So I've actually been probably trying to become the CTO of Shopify for the last 10 years unsuccessfully, and maybe I'll pull it off at some point. But it was.
Not if the board has anything to say about it.
Yeah, might have something to say about that.
So I think, this is a very healthy mindset. Like I would love to find someone who cares as much about Shopify as I do. I would love to find someone who has a clear commitment to figuring out what the future of commerce could hold for the industry, and is excited about steering the company to build software for it. At some point, there's going to be someone who is more qualified for the job, and I'm going to be perfectly happy to hand that over at this point. And I'm sure the board will tell me when that time comes.
So I heard one of your staff tell me that your superpower is knowing when and how to stretch your leaders so they grow. So what is that superpower? What are you looking for? How do you know it's the right moment to grow your team?
I think that staff member is incredibly kind. I don't think there's any superpower. I just apply. All of us here, in this room, why are we doing this thing? Because it's exciting, right? It's exciting to go on a journey. It's exciting. The best thing in the world, honestly, is go on a journey surrounded by friends. Ideally, accomplishing difficult things, right? I actually think once you realize that a really good life lived revolves around being ideally for the entire time on some kind of journey, surrounded by friends doing difficult things, that's when you back into entrepreneurship being a really good idea, right? So when I was thinking about this initial business, starting it, especially around the time when we thought about, should we turn Snow Devil, which was snowboard store, into Shopify, the chance of success was super low, right? But that kind of didn't matter because, and I remember saying this back when we said, it's probably not going to work, but we will learn a lot, right? Because it's going to be difficult. It's like sort of in a video game way. This is like an end boss, which, see if we do it. If not, we'll try it again, do something else, change our approach. And so I'm on this journey, and it's gone so much further than I ever could have imagined. And the reason why I'm so excited about it and why it's so much fun is because I constantly learn new things. And I hold everyone else to this as well, like around me, because I think people have so many misconceptions around how far you can get in your career. People think there's speed limits to how quickly you can advance, which comes from, I think, education system where you say, okay, this year we learn that, and everyone learns at the same pace, and in reality, it's incredible what you can accomplish if everyone just sort of holds itself to this idea of let's become the best versions of ourselves. And so when what I do is I see when people sort of start becoming really comfortable around where they are, and where it sort of feels like we are on this fast-moving train and they somehow are looking to get out at the next station. And then I just don't let them, because even though that seems appealing, they don't want to. They don't, like the people who actually got off at the platforms and left, they regret it after a while. And so I think that it's perfectly okay to take a breather. It's perfectly okay to slow down for a little bit. You have to, on these journeys, sometimes turn around and extend a hand to the people who might not match it over the particular plateau the rest of the team has cleared. But over time, just remind them why these journeys are so exciting and have them invest into their own growth.
So let's talk about your own journey for a moment. What do you do to develop your craft as a CEO? We'll talk about your coding in a minute. And how has has that changed over time? Do you do different things now than you did at the beginning when you were first a CEO?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I have a completely new job every half year. And I always look in horror back at what kinds of things I did a year ago, because, so how did I develop? I mean, sort of practically, after I got this role, I just realized I have no idea how to be a CEO or how to business was a black box to me. I was 24, and actually more like 26, and then specialized like an ant, right? Like I dedicated my life to this point to become as good at programming as I possibly could, and I understood technology. That was literally the only thing I had any business doing. And so I was like, okay, well, to figure this out, like what do I do? And I ended up reading some books, which I chanced on really good books as the first books to read that helped. And just took it from there. I mean, eventually the good news for me was that I think people generally underestimate how much the role of a CEO is actually an engineering challenge, because like so many of the problems are going to be solved by building systems and often changing an environment in such a way that people frankly do the kinds of things that they ought to be doing. And so systems design, architecture, large system understanding, they are all kind of parts of building a good technology system as well. And so I found some angle, which I found some familiarity in the new job, and then from there, I kind of built it up.
that probably very much resonates with a lot of the folks here who are engineers who are now sort of just starting to found companies and become CEOs. You're sort of teeing up my question nicely, which is, I think, I'm sure there's micro decisions every day, but can you tell us about one or two of some of the most important decisions that changed the course of the company? And, what were some of your guideposts or how you make those decisions? And perhaps it comes back to some of your engineering background.
Yeah, sure, there were some key decisions, like also wrong decisions. I really, after I sort of took this over and was building a company, my goal was to build the best 20 people company I could possibly build, right? Like, I just had this idea that that's sort of a size which is, might be manageable with my fake business skills. And it took me way too long to understand that given where Shopify was, and so this was like 2010 now, so at some point through the recession, sort of a Lyman brother recession kind of thing, we actually became profitable because Shopify at this point was quite good. People, in some cases, replaced more expensive software with Shopify, and some people lost their jobs and attempted entrepreneurship using Shopify. And then it took me a long time to understand that this was actually a venture that can be really accelerated. I wasn't so sure until this point. In the specific way how I found out is I saved some money and used it, put it in 4 buckets, which we all kind of ran growth experiments with. And I said that if any of them would work, then I will go to venture capitalists and get money so that we can do more of that. And then all 4 worked. And then it was pretty obvious. So it didn't have to be a genius to make a right choice at this point. So in general, I think that's, how do you make good choices, right? Like, it's such a big topic. It's hard to compress. Good choices are made. So all hard choices are made in the face of some ambiguity, right? Which really leads, by the way, that's same for software. But here's how you become good at writing software. It's actually not about programming. It's about understanding the problem correctly. You spend about 90% of your time researching, understanding, talking with the people who you're trying to create a solution for. You biochemically change your brain to appreciate the entirety of the domain in such a way that even the people who are then going to use the thing have no idea about. That's good software engineering. And then you spend 10% writing code, creating user interfaces, and so on, and solve the problem. I would say the ratios are different. I don't think that's the right degree. But once you understand a problem to 70%, I think it's time to make a choice on something. So if you go into a space, you build the context, then use the context at around when you're sort of 70% sure you understand it to make a choice. You're already doing so much better than most people because almost everyone, it's seemingly, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't true, but from my observation, it seems to be true, makes a choice first and then gets the context to confirm the choice and then makes an official choice. So if you can avoid that, you're out ahead.
What do you wish someone had told you in the early days?
So my standard answer to this is buy Apple stock.
Buy Shopifys.
People told me exactly the right things at the exact times, and then in many cases that wasn't anything, right? Because I think if I had some, if some problems would have been, if I would have avoided some pitfalls, then I wouldn't also not have gotten the lessons out of them, right? Yeah. So I just think there's way too much. I actually worry for a lot of modern companies that there's a little bit too much snow plowing going on. We have now this much more sophisticated accelerator programs where it's people are handed, hey, here's a plausible way to do this thing that you will soon have to do, which we didn't have. Maybe it was around somewhere, but certainly not in Ottawa. And so I think that helped us arguing for the things that we have to do from first principles, and then just sort of not automatically adopting anyone else's solution to a problem, but rather come up with an actual hypothesis based on the context, test it, and adjust from there. I think that's part of the reason why Shopify worked so well, because we held ourselves to this, and we were okay sometimes slowing down things to do that.
So I'm going to hop on this, and then we'll go to the e-commerce. So we were talking earlier today, and you were talking about bringing on board folks who grew up outside of Shopify, and the challenge of transitioning them into your unconventional way of doing things. Can you? Maybe this was confidential, so we'll see whether You talked about writing a letter to help them kind of understand the unconventional nature. Can you talk a little bit about what's in that letter?
So what I explain is, here's something I've seen too many times happen now, which we bring in people who are very accomplished and have a lot of expertise in a certain area. And they think that we hired them because of the things they know. And then they want to become very effective as soon as possible, so they will do exactly the thing they know. And they will encounter significant antibodies at Shopify. So this just it's not a winning strategy in most cases. And the reason is that especially accomplished people who have been from one company to another and have been multiple times successful with slightly modified similar strategies, encounter a real roadblock with my particular company. And the reason for this is because, again, Shopify companies are much more, like they're almost like living things. They're species. Evolution is actually one thing which I really encourage people to study. There's wonderful books by Dawkins about how evolution actually works and other people. And once you do understand how it works, you will understand that sort of emergence is actually something that you can use in your companies. And, but I digress. Companies have a family tree, very much, especially in technology. In fact, it's really a monoculture that exists there. There was basically Fairchild Semiconductors at some point in Silicon Valley, which is for typical technology companies. That was run in a certain way, and every company you can name, at least on the West Coast, is really a branch or a leaf of this particular family tree of companies. It's like semiconductors to Intel, and then there's a Google branch and Facebook branch and so on. All these companies you can move between because they have the same DNA. They're recognizable. And the reason why they're recognizable is because the same people, like Intel was literally founded by the treacherous aide from Fairchild. And so because of that, they cross-pollinated in their ideas. And you do OKRs over here, you can probably do them in another place. If evolution is a thing and it's location-bound, Ottawa is like the Galapagos Islands of this particular thing. There is no cross-pollination. We had to be our own seedling, right? We had to just start something new. And to be fair, we have ideas which we brought over, but we had a filter. Like to us, the ideas from the existing tech industry never came in the form of hiring someone who just brought the entire package with them. They always came, and this is something we only learned much later, the information came by us visiting Silicon Valley or Boston or New York City or any of those places, and then sitting down and talking with people. And the thing that we didn't realize is that the information we were getting from there was not actually an accurate representation of what other companies were like. What we got was the highlight reel. They told us how they would like to be. And then we took that back and compared that against our average, which then we hoped to hold to the same standards. And by doing so, we actually had a process which allowed us to make choices and say, is this something we want, the way they describe it? Is this something we can import? Do we need to do on-the-fly modifications? And so through all this process over these years, we built something that just, it is a tech company, but it doesn't have a lot of the same kind of core beliefs that are kind of underdocumented in these places, and they're just sort of the grammar of the place, so to speak. And so this letter says this. This letter says, this place is different, and here's why, and here's how it happened. It usually takes people about a year, sometimes a year and a half, to figure out that Shopify is actually successful because of its differences, not despite of the differences. And just helping people skip over this. And it goes through a couple of examples and the things we value, but it ends on, I think, the most important sentence that people need to understand once they come to us, which is that, no, we did not hire you because of the things you know. We hire you because of our confidence that when something gets difficult, you can figure out what to do. And that's incredibly liberating, because once people realize this and internalize this and understand what we mean about this sort of humility, but also our belief that things can be figured out, you can show up very real. You don't need to have all the answers. Like, I don't know is actually one of the most valued sentences in our company. We hold ourselves to being much more like an idea factory, where like good ideas win. And so overall, adjusting to that is tricky, but it's also completely intoxicating for people who manage to make the transition, because it's a wonderful way to work together.
Just to build on that, I think that's fascinating, and I think we think a lot about sort of how hiring reflects sort of how you build this type of culture. How do you screen for that specific quality in interviews?
Yeah, we have our interview process is built around spotting future potential much more than existing skills. And the core part of our hiring is built around, like the recruiter will sit down with the candidate, and they will go through the life story. That's a big part of it. And people find that pretty weird, and but the trick of what the recruiter will do, and they're all trained in this school of thinking, and there's a lot of process, like this is a big part of the success of a company, I think, is that as we're going through the life story, we are looking for very specific things, and especially once we find the right kind of anecdote, we will really, really dig, and the thing we're looking for is that something went wrong, and then we dig into exactly what did you do. Like, not just you were part of what team, like it's what were your moves. Like, we go sometimes down to the second. Like what was, how long did it take until you took? And actually we don't, not that we worry about the speed, we just want to understand it to this microscopic level. Because again, we're looking for people who are resourceful, who can, I hired my first executive assistant, and we were 300 people. I tried to hold out as long as possible. The person I hired, the reason why I hired him, because he had a story about, in his life story, he told me that at some point he went to Europe only once, and I was like, okay, why did you go? It's like, yeah, a friend of mine was in a band, and I helped him organize like the band trip. It's like, oh, okay, why did you do that? It's just, I like doing this kind of thing. Cool, that's useful. So how did it go? Oh, it was terrible. The bassist didn't come, so I had the entire flight. They had to teach me the bass lines because so it's like, cool, you're hired. So it's amazing what you find, like in life stories. But it's kind of a way you do the way you do something is the way you do everything, and so it ends up being very relevant.
Love that. I might switch gears a little bit, if that's okay. You know, a lot of us in the room are very interested in the future of commerce, and we meet a lot of early stage startups and founders who are interested in this space, but as you look at the industry and you see many multi-billion-dollar players like Shopify and Amazon out there, people wonder sort of, is there room? You know, is there room for the next big tech software that can disrupt it? So I'm curious, you know, are there still opportunities for early stage startups, and where do you see some of the white space?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, retail is not like some kind of industry. It's kind of the entire economy, right? Like it's amazing how consistently people underestimate. Like if you just look at I mean, we are doing internet software here, right? Look at the breakdown of retail sales to e-commerce sales in China, which is the one market which just broke differently because of a lack of initial infrastructure, and just like how some developing countries have much more cell phone penetration because they didn't have landlines.
Right.
China is the indicative country of what e-commerce is at its full maturity. And right now, of Western economies, I think it's like 16-17% e-commerce. It will go a lot, it'll go up a lot. And those are not small numbers. So tons of opportunity. In fact, probably taking part in the expansion of the online expansion of global commerce is probably the biggest opportunity on this planet. So it's a fantastic space to go into. We need a lot more infrastructure. We need a lot more technology. The way people, think about how big of a situation already exists about people buying things and how few companies have access to good logistics. Amazon had to build it for themselves because the UPSs and other companies and FedExes just kind of didn't build the thing that e-commerce needs, even though we are going into a world where everyone buys most things with a click. And so there's a massive misjudgment, I think, by the industry observers across what e-commerce will be eventually. And so, yes, I think there's lots of space. More importantly, I think, and more actionably, there's a lot of companies, like retailers, it's like just even on Shopify alone, it's $100 billion of sales so far. And every single one of us merchants pays monthly for their software with us. And every one of them, if you have anything that you can give them that costs $1 and makes $1.10 over some reasonable time frame, they'll buy it. It's as simple as that. It's so wonderfully simple in that way. It's not kind of, you don't have to convince anyone to change their entire business around your software. You don't have to change, your software can make it sell with math. That's a very compelling way to sell software.
So Shopify is in the process of acquiring Six River Systems here in Boston. I just met one of the co-founders. What opportunities does this unleash for Shopify? Why was this an important strategic move? Kind of where is all that going?
Right. So I think the thing that's fun about Shopify is we are I think institutionally extremely dissatisfied with the experience that people have to go through in the process of building online businesses. And this is this doesn't limit itself to just what we are currently doing. We think the lines that existed in this industry were arbitrary, based on engineering comfort almost. Someone decided that there's e-commerce software was a industry, and point of sale software was a industry, and then the logistics was a industry, and kind of separated these all into swim lanes. And we are just saying, hey, people want to be entrepreneurs on the internet, and then take these companies and turn them into $100 billion companies. That's basically what's going on. So why have we these swim lanes and then these market size segments that just build software that solves a problem, right? It's hard. We have 1,000-something engineers in the company. It's like, this is my 15th year in the company. It's going to take a lot more to get there. But that's our comfort is not a good reason for why our merchants and customers have to re-platform when they get to a certain size, or have to go and build the entire business by signing up once on the software, and then at the moment they get to a scale where they have 10 or 20 or 30 orders a day, now they have to fly around the continent and finding warehouses which are impossible to locate, and have contracts which are all different. No, we want them to, at some point, just say, okay, I'm ready for a truck to show up, you give us the products, and we distribute them because we can use the data from across the entire continent, we can forecast demand, and we can make sure that these products get to your customers within the shortest possible period of time for good prices. That is, I think that is of a lot of value. Now, can we do this? We'll see. Certainly need a lot of help, so thank you very much, Six River Systems, for joining us. But that's something we're going to do over the next years, because my snowboard store was quite successful when I started it, but I had to shut it down while building Shopify, partly because logistics just took too much time. I couldn't figure out a way to outsource and use a 3PL back in those days. And so in a way, what Shopify attempts to do is we try to build the perfect software that could have existed back in those days when I started my snowboard store, and so this is part of it.
So I feel like we could stay up here for an hour, but unfortunately we're the final thing between this and cocktails. So Gail, do you want to ask the last question?
So you talk about building a 100-year company. What does that mean to you? Why does it matter? And how does it shape how you operate every day?
I think there's many reasons for building companies. Like, for instance, I mean, just it's perfectly good to start a company just to have reach for independence, right? And create a better life, a job for yourself. Like, exactly, like you're facilitating and helping lots of people. Some people build companies to flip, right? They are built sort of custom. I've heard once about the company that was built to sell itself to become Google Slides. Like perfect, like here's the thing exactly Google needed to round out their G Suite.
I think you have a few of those in your partner ecosystem.
And they exist, for sure. And there's nothing bad about it, but I think if you're not one of any of those, you really have to say so, because everything changes in decision making. And so I think this is one way how we are just making it super clear internally that under no circumstances do we want people to go and pull significant future profits forward at a discount, which is really the thing that we call short-termism, right? Like, short-termism doesn't make sense if you want to make your decisions in such a way that you're the happiest with your decisions looking backwards for a decade or two. And that's what it means to me. Shopify, it just, if it works well and continues doing what it's doing, it'll be an institution that exists to make internet entrepreneurship available to the broadest amount of people, right? And this is important because a lot of the forces of the internet cause centralization, right? Like we see this, like there's one social network, right? One search engine and so on. And that's like, to the people who have been around in the 90s when the internet came to town, that's really sad, right? We actually thought it was going to be an incredible mechanism of democratization and participation, and you could put something on the internet, everyone would see it. And in a way, like, Shopify is a little bit idealistic about this kind of thing. We want there to be like millions of businesses, tens of millions of businesses all across the planet. We want to integrate every crazy tiny island in the middle of Atlantic back into the world economy in some meaningful way. And so that takes time, and for that you have to be independent, because that is not an obvious, like, that is a mission that is not exactly the perfect way to make money. You need to figure out how to build a business model to support that mission, and then negotiate that with all the stakeholders. And I think so far we've done a good job doing this. And hopefully that's going to continue for at least those 85 years which are left. And it is not a countdown. It's just a milestone. And hopefully when Shopify gets there, it'll do a little party and then get right back to doing for another 100 years.
Plotting out the next 100 years.
Hopefully.
There you go.
Well, wonderful. Well,
great.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Gail, Tobi.
Can I just say special thank you for Gail for being part of a wonderful journey. It's so great to have you, and thank you so much.
I am honored.
Thank you.